Uganda is one of the countries that are celebrated, perhaps such as Tanzania and Kenya, for having a large percentage of women in parliament. Now, sadly for me, a lot of those women who are members of parliament act as if they have penises. They forget that they are women with body parts for women who must represent the issues of women. In Uganda, since 2016, when Yoweri Museveni promised young girls who are from poor families and especially rural areas and formerly war ravaged areas sanitary pads so that they would continue with their schools during menstruation, when he failed to fulfill that promise, he had a bunch of women members of parliament in parliament discussing legislation and representing their areas. However, up to today, those women who represent, we have what we call women MPs in Uganda, those women who represent the issues of women, those women who enter parliament on the woman's quota ticket have never represented the issue of menstruation and sanitary pads and menstrual hygiene and menstrual education to parliament in such ways that the budget which they are responsible for overseeing and monitoring and appropriation and distribution caters for poor young schoolgirls, but also they have never been able to bring the executive wing, the head of state, Dictator Yoweri Museveni, to account for his promise that he reneged. So it's as if these women don't menstruate, and it's as if their children don't menstruate, and it's as if they've forgotten the women's agenda. I am particularly interested in menstrual health because it is based on the president's promise. However, there are so many other issues, maternal and child health. Women in East Africa still die while giving birth. Women lack access to contraception and abortion services. Women still are earning wages way below the minimum wage. And we have so many issues as women in East Africa. However, we have women representing us, and it's as if these women suddenly forget the issues that affect other women for whom they are representatives in parliament. And so, what I'm saying, I know we haven't actually started the discussion, but for me, whenever I'm invited to a space where the role of women is going to be a topic of discussion. It doesn't matter if I'm tired, if I'm asleep, if I'm prepared, if I'm in jail, if I'm dirty. I wake up and put on my shoes and drink some water to give strength to my voice, and I go and I participate because it is important that we keep agitating, keep reminding, keep defending, keep fighting for the effective role of women to fight for civil rights and freedoms. And so I want to thank you very much. I thank Mwanzo TV for creating this space and opening it up to us. And I hope we can be able to go to all the different key areas that women need to be represented, and our issues have fallen off the agenda, that we can retable these issues on the agenda. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Dr. Stella, thank you so much for your comments. I mean, some of the things you're talking about, because I do know you have worked with various women, as much as you've been a very active human rights defender in your country. We did do your story on Shangazi Power and just basically talking about how you've been supporting women. I know that's something we'd look at, because what I'm getting from you is the fact that as women, yani, we are not supporting each other. So what really is the problem? Because we can't say that we don't have women in parliament or in government, whether in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, or Burundi, whichever African country. But are we saying that, yes, we have women in government, but yet they have forgotten why they were put there, and partly also to represent the voice of the young girls and also the women. Again, I just want to mention today's discussion, and I'm so happy to see many of you tonight, just looking at some of the things that we're talking about today. To tell you, anyone who's just joined in right now, today we're talking about the role of women in fighting for civil rights and freedoms. You see, we can look at ladies who have exemplary stories, and we are so happy we'll be having some of these ladies representing the voice of the women. Again, this discussion is based on Mwanzo TV's documentary series that we will be running. in every year we'll be having a couple of those documentary series where we talk about different things that have to do with women. Shangazi Power, basically our last docu-series, we touched on different women who have, made a big difference in their respective countries. We looked at Wangari Maathai. I mean, we all remember Wangari Maathai, the lady who was not even fearful of the government. She did go through into the streets, and she was beaten down at some point, and she's a woman we remember not just in Africa but the world over. Of course, we in Shangazi Power, the last docu-series, we talked about women like Fatma Karume, who is a very exemplary advocate in Tanzania, and her story is one of not being fearful of the government of the day. Some of the things we're seeing in Tanzania, a government that has a president who wields so much power to decide who goes into the judiciary, who goes into the election body. I mean, who is elected in what positions? And these are very critical positions. And these are some of the women who have been very vocal. Bibi Titi Mohammed, the late Bibi Titi Mohammed of Tanzania, she's a woman who worked very closely next to the late President Julius Nyerere. And she made a difference. But again, this woman is not talked about so much, yet her contribution is felt in Tanzania until now. And we look at women like Dr. Stella Nyanzi, who's just spoken to us right now, a woman who has been very vocal against the oppression of the government in Uganda. Fearless women like this, we need to celebrate them. We need to support women, and women need to support each other. Let's talk about Jerotitse, who's also been part of Linda Katiba. Linda Katiba was so instrumental in making sure that the BBI document, the Building Bridges Initiative document, did not see the light of day. Many people, and very many people across the country in Kenya, felt the BBI document would have been a retrogressive document that would not help the country, Kenya in this case, to see the gains of the current constitution, the 2010 constitution. And those are some of the things we're looking at today. I mean, just contributions from exemplary women, like I've mentioned, Jerotitse of Kenya, Dr. Stella Nyanzi of Uganda. We have also Fatma Karume, who will be joining us. She's from Tanzania. Of course, we have also an exemplary woman. We cannot fail to mention her, Maria Sarungi, a woman who is also very fearless. She has been very vocal about some of the ills that have been perpetrated by the government in Tanzania. And these women will be joining us today. And I can see Jerotitse is here with us. Also, thank you, Dr. Stella Nyanzi, you're here. Fatma Karume, good to see you as well. And Maria Sarungi, thank you for being with us today. Everyone else who's with us today for this discussion, I'm very happy to have you all here. Again, let me just mention, today we're talking about the role of women in fighting for civil rights and freedoms. Like it or not, by the way, women have the ability to bring change in their respective countries. But the question is the woman given that opportunity to explore her potential? And I'm so happy to see all of you here again. Everyone is welcome to just chip in and give us your views about the topic today, women in the fight, in the role of women rather in the fight for civil rights and freedoms. I'll just pick up a conversation here and just hear from Fatma Karume, who has joined us. Happy to see you. If I can just hear some thoughts from you, Fatma, even as we kick off the discussion, the role of women in fighting for civil rights and freedoms, just something to kick us off, your thoughts about this particular topic. Hello? Fatma, are you
Hello.
there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Good to see you.
Excellent. Good to see you too. Good evening, everybody. Well, my thoughts about it are this: women are the ones who suffer most in despotic regimes. We've seen it the world over. Um, Democracy works for women, and how? Why do I say that? Look at all the countries which are led by women. Through free and fair elections, Finland, New Zealand, you see that these are very progressive countries, countries in which civil rights are respected, and countries which respect democracy. So women who believe in despotism are women who do not believe in the emancipation of our sex. So for me, civil liberties are a must if we are to empower ourselves.
Fantastic. I picked up something from Dr. Stella Fatma, and one of the things she mentioned is fine, we have women in governance, government positions, and just even in different institutions. But the question is, the women are there. They know the needs of the women, the girls, some of the needs of menstrual, needs that many girls have across Africa, but yet these needs are still very pronounced in different African countries, whether in Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya. I mean, these needs remain consistent. So we have women in government, but would you say perhaps some women in government may have forgotten the role that they have there in representing the voice of the young girls and the women?
I think you're assuming that the women in government or governance in Africa are there to represent women. They're not. A lot of them have been put there to represent men. And some of them are there by accident of history. And I say this with all due respect to my president. She was put there by men. And it was camouflage. The men wanted her to be a vice president and actually so that Tanzania or CCM could be represented as a progressive party that respected women's rights and respected women. And it was camouflage. That's all it was. During her vice presidency, I doubt very much that Magufuli respected her views or gave her any sort of authority. I don't remember her having any authority.
Okay. And in this case, I know you're talking about the current president of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu. Gerotich, you have been working with other women in your field of advocacy for, human rights, and just I know you call yourself an active citizen, and just looking at how women have been perceived, let's say, in the area of politics, in the area of just being steerers of change, whether in governance, whether in just critical institutions. What would you say is the perception of the ability of women to lead in Kenya? Jeroti, say.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Leah?
Yes, Jerich, I
Hello,
can hear you.
Okay, hi. Good evening, everybody. It's really good to be with all
hello,
of you.
Jerotich.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Jerotich, are you there?
Yes, I
Leah,
am.
Leah, I can hear Jerich. Can you hear her?
Okay, I can't hear her.
Okay.
Hmm.
I think the best maybe is for Jerich to continue speaking maybe, and then maybe you can listen via another connection, Leah, to her response.
No problem, no problem. Jerotich, sorry about that. Just continue.
Okay, and Maria, kindly let me know if you stop being able to hear me. It's
I
great to
will.
be with all of you this evening. Maria, my other sisters, Stella and Fatma, it's a pleasure. Leah, thank you for hosting this, and thank you for inviting us and all the listeners this evening. I think that Kenya is a place where the more things change, the more things seem to stay exactly the same. We are a country that, on the surface of things, appears to be quite progressive, even in terms of gender equality, gender equity. We seem to be an open space where people can speak, men and women, etc., especially within, shall I say, even these activist spaces. But once you begin to scratch the surface a little bit, perceptions of women and their ability to lead or their ability to engage actively often get boxed into spaces that either denigrate them, sexually peg them into certain spaces, call them the flower girls or the little fillers of spaces. We have a constitution that talks about the two-thirds gender rule. We're not able to achieve it as Kenyans. And so for me, there's always a bit of a double speak, because it is not that women are not able to speak up. I speak up. I'm a woman. I'm an active citizen, but there's just always that slight um, uh, um, e- undertone that at the end of the day, I'm still only a woman. So in terms of gender equity, gender equality in Kenya, we still have a long way to go. And it behooves those of us who are able to speak up and out to, especially in spaces where you can engage in leadership in public life, to do what you can, to be present, to be active, to be outspoken. And we know that there's a big price to be paid. On social media, you're trolled or you're called all types of things. But I think it's about having that clarity that at the end of the day, we're striving for and towards a society that holds and enshrines equality and equity as its very center. And it's not just about sex, it's about ability. It goes beyond sex. It's about ability, it's about age, it's about, a whole range of things. But as a woman who's out in public, it has been a bit challenging. But by and large, I have received over time, especially with a level of consistency around certain issues, an audience that's willing to listen and willing to engage. But we still have a long way to go in Kenya.
Thanks so much, Jerotich. Leah, did you hear Jerotich through another channel?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, go on.
All right. Thank you so much, Jerotich, for your comments. I'm having a bit of a feedback from my feed, but sorry guys about that. But you know what, Jerotich, I do remember when we did your documentary on Shangazi Power not so long ago. What I got from you in terms of your story, some of the things you mentioned is, and I think you've talked about them, the stereotypes that are imposed on women, especially women who want to take on leadership roles. And like you've mentioned, the two-thirds gender, it's not even affected in Kenya completely. And we still talk about it until now. But one tends to wonder, these stereotypes that we still see that are imposed on women until this moment, why are they still there? We've been talking about the stereotypes for a long time. It's not to say that women cannot lead. It's not to say that women do not have the ability. It is seen, and we've mentioned there are women who are presidents at this moment. But why do we still have those stereotypes that more or less seem to bog down women from taking on those positions and even just having the confidence that they can actually lead? I'll just throw that question to you, Maria. I'd like to hear from you as far as, just the stereotypes that have been imposed on women over time.
Yes, thank you so much for this question. And I think that it is very important to note that one of the reasons the Shangazi Power series has been very key in the thinking and in the production of it is that one of the things that often happens is that women do not dominate news. So one of the biggest surveys that has ever been done by the Global Media Monitoring Project has shown that the topic of women usually covers between 20 to 30% only in news, anything that's related to women, especially when it comes that the focus is on the woman herself. And surprisingly, about 70-80% of the time, it is in entertainment, beauty contests, and so on and so forth. It is very rare for women to be portrayed in other roles. The other way that women usually are portrayed are in politics, but I think Stella talked about it in a very exceptional way, and Fatma touched on that as well, that you're shown in politics, yet within that political context, you actually are put in a light whereby you have to be masculine in one way or another, or you have to address issues that interest men or the male-dominated narrative than anything else. But on the flip side of that, the stereotypes are also perpetrated by the mainstream media, which then, of course, filters into the social media and other places. And one of the reasons is women are not in the position to make decisions when it comes to news production, choosing the kind of news, the tone of the news, because oftentimes women, and this has been shown by a separate study by the International Women's Media Project, which has shown that women especially in Kenya, Uganda. They did not do for Tanzania, but the survey they did for Kenya and Uganda has shown that the majority of the women are in support roles. So they're not usually producers. Like in your case there, you would have a free hand to produce it and to sort of say that what angle you'll take when you're doing the documentaries and so forth. But that doesn't happen often. So more often it is men who make the decision, men who will determine the direction that a certain documentary will go. So you'll find some of these phenomenal women we are on today in this space are not getting the right kind of coverage. They're not getting the stories told from that angle. That is why you find one of the things, if I recall, that when it comes to finding literature on Dr. Stella Nyanzi, you'll find that she's being portrayed like this woman who strips naked, who is rude, who doesn't know her boundaries. It's almost like so
Yes, it's true.
negative, yeah?
Yes,
So
it's
that's
true.
the but that stereotype comes also from mainstream media. So I want to really emphasize that although there is a lot of the social, but it is reinforced by the narrative that's created in the what we call the fourth pillar as well.
Maria, I'm happy you mentioned Dr. Stella Nyanzi's story, and I was actually coming to her because just looking at her story and your life story, Dr. Stella, the kinds of stories that have been written about you, and it's almost sad to look at the kind of headlines you're given in some of the online digital pieces that will be writing about Dr. Stella Nyanzi. One of them, one of the pieces there I read online not too long ago, called her Uganda's rudest woman. And another one just talking about her stripping naked, and just the perception is not really, and it would appear it's not so much about the kind of things that Dr. Stella Nyanzi is advocating for, fighting for, but it's more so about this woman who should be probably at home cooking or taking care of the children. She's in the streets fighting for the rights of the people. Just the perception of where the women are supposed to be in the kitchen, in the house, taking care of children. What is she doing in the streets? Why is this woman so loud? The woman is supposed to be quiet. I mean, this is some of the stereotypes you're looking at. And like you've mentioned, Maria, the issue of media, and just that's what we're looking at. And I just want to hear from you, Dr. Stella, the portrayal of your story on media outlets, be it newspapers, be it digital pieces. What do you feel about this?
Right. So, for starters, I am portrayed. For starters, they call me something. For starters, I have a voice, right? And I think for me, although it's negative often, I am way above several other women who have no voice, have no face, have no character, never appear anywhere, in spite of the progressive work they're doing for women, in spite of the impacts they're doing, in spite of the different issues they articulate ably and they amplify. And so I think for me, that as a warrior, I might get offended and lose sight of the goal and say, oh, I've been called mad. I've been called mentally ill all the time. The government called me that. They didn't just call me, they even applied to the Chief Magistrate's Court in my country to subject me to involuntary mental examination. And I had to contest that in the Constitutional Court. By calling me mad, a door was opened for me to go to the Constitutional Court of Uganda. How many women without a law degree have gone to the Constitutional Court with a petition? And so I suppose for me, one of the things I do as a I believe in subversion. I believe in using the very spaces in which I'm thrust, often naked, sometimes mentally ill, uh, ugly, masculine, without any femininity in me. And then I go and I use those very spaces to stand my agenda on the table or bash that agenda. And it is a struggle. So, one of the things I celebrate is that the stereotypes imposed on women have been I have used them to open doors for me and then to overturn the narrative. Okay. That is subversive strategy. That is using The master's Audre Lorde is a feminist who say to us that the master's tools cannot be used to smash the master's house. I think, in my experience, that sometimes the only tools one has are indeed the slave master's tools. And so, what I've done to perfection is to take those very tools and smash the master's house. And so, one of the things I'm kind of saying is, invite me into your space on your own terms at your own risk, because I will insert my terms into that space. All that I need is an opening. Of course, then I come out as combative and confrontational. And for me, as a radical queer feminist who is practicing both scholarship, thought, and praxis, it is okay to be mislabeled, because part of what I've invested my lifetime in doing is rewriting the narrative. So I will come in as one that's been called mentally ill and force parliament, force activists, work with other people in the mental health and well-being fraternity circles, force them to revisit a colonial law that we have. And in fact, the Mental Treatment Act of 1935 that was revised in 1940, upon which my mental exam was being forced onto me, has been amended in Uganda. I participated in its review in Parliament. When I went to give my view, there were only 2 women from civil society. I was one of the women, and the other one is a sister who suffers from ADHD. But I don't know what the full word is. So what I'm saying is, without digressing too much, is the stereotypes can be used to put women in their place. However, a woman who's observed warrior women, my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, in battle, will take the very same stereotypes, use them to open doors. I like enter places of power and be flowers, pretty flowers, smile, have lipstick, be silent, be seen, but be silent. But to insist on entering as a pretty flower and then explode from your flower pot and create change has been a strategy sometimes, that we get invited as innocent little women doing the work of men for men. And then we of women to be able to overturn stereotypes. I find that in addition to the audience that Maria was referring to when she talked about the media, that one needs support of like-minded women and men. And so part of the work that I am slowly, consciously, and deliberately doing is recruiting women and men in society of like-minded spirit and praxis, where it doesn't matter how we enter into spaces. The thing is, we get there and then we reset the agenda for ourselves. I have spoken for long, but
Just finish up.
I wanted to quickly talk about um, the idea that, in addition to being masculine women, so women coming in and being given tools, equipped to do the work of men for men,
Yes,
Hello.
I think
in
we lost the.
governance.
Ah, there she is. She's
Sorry,
back.
Oh,
She's
she's
back.
somebody
back.
was calling
Yeah.
me. Um,
It's okay. Go ahead.
can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Okay, so
Stella. Just go
I was
ahead.
just saying that the depoliticization of women who are actively involved, where we are given tools, given resources, and given enough space, just enough space. So issues around the ceiling, the glass ceiling, the boundaries, the limits. And so we've seen women, particularly in regime parties, who can go so far but not so far. Don't step out of line. Don't be controversial. Don't break the mold. Don't challenge. Don't be too this or too that. And the idea that we are given demobilized power. We are given dynamo without the dynamite. We're given a gun without the bullet. We're given meat and we have mouths, but our teeth are taken out. And what I'm talking about is a sort of paralysis of the power of women to make change on our own terms for our own issues as women and resetting the agenda. So there are, and many of these types of women are elite. They call themselves feminists. They work in civil society and NGO.
Hello?
Am I still audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Yes, and so the depoliticization, demobilization, sort of the defanging our lethal fangs as poisonous sticks are taken out of our mouths, and then we are rendered sort of there and potent but impotent, and I think that is problematic.
Thank you, Dr. Stella. I just want to hear from one of the other speakers we have with us, a gentleman by the name Lukman. Lukman, if you are there and you can hear me, I think my question to you, because I know I've heard a lot from the ladies who are here, there's amazing women who have beautiful stories to tell us about some of the experiences they've encountered. But just a question to you, Lukman, do you think it's really realistic to, confine women in some of those stereotypes that we're talking about, that a woman is supposed to be in the kitchen, and if she's in leadership, she, like Jerry would say, she's supposed to be sort of like a flower. Basically, there are still limitations on her being able to become something bigger or greater than what the people, or would say the men around her, would perceive her to become. Lukman, what do you think about this? Do you think it's realistic to impose on women these stereotypes that we've seen over time? Hello? Lukman? Lukman, if you can hear me. I don't know if he can hear me, but we'll come back to you. I just want to pick up this conversation and just throw a question there to Fatma. Fatma, your story, and as we mentioned earlier on, this particular Twitter Spaces is based on Shangazi Power, which is a special documentary series that is run by Mwanzo TV, basically highlighting the stories of different women, the role of women in society, the contribution. I know, and we did do one of the documentary series there about Bibi Titi Mohammed of Tanzania. This woman was so exemplary when it came to mobilizing women towards the struggle for independence. She was able to rally up women, rally up their husbands, the children, the community, talking about the power of a woman. Fatma, what do you make of the treatment of women in your country, in Tanzania, and especially also the young girls? Because I know you've been working with young girls who have been barred from attending school because they have become pregnant, and them now having to go backwards in terms of their progress, and then taking it back again later in the years after they've been able to pick up after pregnancy. What would you say about the treatment of women in Tanzania, Fatma?
Hi, I hope I'm not going to be disconnected, because the last time I spoke, I was speaking to myself and I realized, oh dear, I'm not
Sorry about
online.
that.
So, look, it's part of this misogynism, that a young girl, sometimes who has been raped, other times who has experimented with another young man in school and happens to get pregnant, is then thrown out of school or expelled from school because of a uterus. Because if we cut this down and we simplify this, if we didn't have uteruses, we wouldn't get pregnant. Let's be honest, right? We have uteruses. This is, it's a biological accident. Or one could argue that due to biology, we are able to reproduce. So why should we be penalized for having a uterus, for God's sake? And what annoys me is that if you look at the way Magufuli behaved, it ties in to the concept, and I hope, Stella, you're listening to this, it ties into this concept of hysteria. There's something about our uteruses, you know, that men detest. If we get pregnant, they detest it. If we get upset, they call it hysteria, which, you know, it has to do with the uterus. What is it about our uteruses that they find so objectionable that they have to punish us for it? Maybe it's because actually they like sex without having to pay the price of a child. But, you know, that is a cost, guys. So I do find it objectionable, and I do think it's misogynistic that young ladies are punished for having a uterus that happens to carry a child. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Leah, are you there?
Oh, I thought I was disconnected again.
No, no, no.
Hello.
You're good.
Sorry
You're on.
about that, Fatma. I'm here. Thank you, Fatma. Thank you, Fatma. Jyotish, I would like to hear from you because we have talked about the stereotypes, but how have you been able, as a woman in Kenya, you call yourself an active citizen, a woman who has not been fearful. You've been very fearless. You've been able to talk to on media interviews, addressing the government of the day in Kenya, talking to the president and saying, "Hey, we are not going to allow you to pass a document that is going to bring retrogression in our country constitutionally." And you've not been afraid. You've been very fearless. And you're just one of the many women in Kenya who have been fighting and advocating for the rights of the common Mwananchi. Jerotich, how are you able to do this? Being fearless, because yes, the government can decide to do, one or two things and get maybe some of you in jail or something like that, but you still go out to the streets, you still go on social media, and you're fearless. What can you tell the women out there who know in their respective countries there's a lot of oppression, but they are afraid of coming out because, in any case, like we've talked about, there's that stereotype of where the woman is supposed to be. How do you weather through this and rise above it, Heritage?
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to just reflect a little bit on what Stella, my sister Stella, had mentioned earlier, and I do admire so much this radical rudeness that Stella. Dr. Stella has said, this is my pathway. This is my strategy. You walk in, you're a flower girl, you're a flower, and you explode and you move and you infiltrate those spaces. And I think what is coming out very clearly to me is that strategy is important. Knowing the environment and knowing exactly how you want to achieve or how you seek to achieve those objectives, a set of objectives that you have. Now, long before Linda Katiba, I was working on Switch Off KPLC. For me, this is about energy justice. My position has always been and continues to be fix energy, fix Kenya. And when you think even about energy, whether it is women chopping firewood or burning charcoal or queuing for paraffin or kerosene, women bear the brunt, or paying for electricity, exorbitantly expensive, fraudulently overbilled electricity in Kenya. It is women who bear the brunt. But I'll also say men bear the brunt, because when we're paying for electricity, when we're paying for diesel, for super, for paraffin, we are all paying the cost. But I can also look at it gendered and say women do carry a heavier burden, because women are the ones who are supposed to figure out how they're getting the fuel to cook the food to feed their children every night. So back to the issue of strategy for me, I said, how do I want to engage these spaces? And I said, if I'm going to come into the space of energy justice or even the protection of the Constitution, you have to come with your facts correct all the time. So mine is a very research oriented approach to doing the work that I do. So that by the time, and I use social media primarily as my space to put out my message and to do public education, that my facts are incontrovertible. So I come in from a very factual perspective. And oftentimes people are engaging, and then at some point they realize, oh, by the way, she's also a woman. And often when people realize, oh, by the way, she's also a woman, then somebody will have the temerity to mention my lipstick or to say, oh, your skirt is short or this or that or the other. I'm like, this is my skirt. These are my thighs. If it's short, shauriako, live with it, put up with it. I'm not interested in your opinion around my sex, something that I did not choose. I did not choose to be born female. And as Fatma was saying, I didn't choose to have a uterus. We are here. And for me, anybody who tries to take the conversation down this space where you're denigrated and shut down because you're a woman, I say, let's look at the facts. Let's come back to the issues at hand. I see my sister Wajeri Nderu, who is my fellow Energy Justice Crusader and also a member of Linda Katiba. She is in the media and she knows also what it takes to be a woman in these spaces where you have to stand with a high level of integrity, where at every moment there's somebody trying to trip you up. When you're speaking, somebody's looking to misinterpret what you've said and to turn it against you and troll you and try to finish you and push you out of social media. And for me, I come from a line of extremely strong women. My mother, my grandmother, the women who have mentored me, who have grown up around, who have said, stand your ground. I know it is not easy and it's not a solution for every single person because people choose and pick their battles depending on the tools they have available at their disposal and the capacities they have at that point in time. But I have chosen to take the brave route and speak my truth. I also find that as a woman in this particular space, when all else fails, they also throw tribe against me, ethnicity against me. So as women, sometimes we bear the burden of being female, of being women in a male dominated space. And then when all else fails, they say, oh, by the way, you happen to be Kalenjin. Oh, we know the political party that you support. We know that you're most likely with Dr. William Ruto because he's a Kalenjin and you're a Kalenjin. And I have everybody assigning me to political party, political leaning, political orientation, because the work that I do is highly political. But I say politics should not be weaponized against the issues that we're raising. And I always stay steadfast and say, I'm nonpartisan when it comes to the suffering that we face as men and women and boys and girls in our country. So for me, it's really about pep talking myself, surrounding myself with a community of good men and good women who are able to say, stand your ground, hold the line, do not falter, have your facts straight, and don't let anybody, even for a second, talk you down because you're a female. Let them challenge your facts. Let them challenge a whole bunch of other things, but let them not use your sex against you and your gender against you. So mine is to continuously encourage others, men and women, women and men, young, old, just to come out and speak your truth, because the more of us we are, the louder our voice becomes. I'm not necessarily brave. In fact, anyone who goes into a space utterly fearlessly is a bit, without the necessary adrenaline or the necessary kind of boundaries. I am sometimes nervous and I am sometimes concerned that I say this today, will something happen to me? I know some of my sisters here have had to literally flee their countries, flee for their lives. I know that Stella is a writer in exile. I know my other sisters have had to leave the country to save their lives. I am still fortunate and safe, knock on wood, and continue to speak my truth. And such a time when I'm no longer safe, I know that I will have the resources and the support to move where I need to move to be safe. Not just myself, but we also have to think of our children, of our families, of all of those who we are responsible for, and those who are also concerned about us and sometimes also responsible for us.
Laira, will you allow me to
Thank
beat
you so much.
Karuru?
Thank you. Like, Dr. Stella, you can go ahead.
I was saying, will you allow me to beat Karuru for Gerotich? I mean, in Luganda we have. It would be too shrill on this space. I don't know how Twitter spaces work with Nduru, but we go in celebration.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
We
And
can all
so
join in.
what I wanted to say was that when one so I met Jerotich in Kenya around a fireplace at her house. I don't know if she remembers. I was in the middle
Of course
giving the
I
meal.
do.
Oh, the meal was lovely. The beer was good. I mean, so but why I wanted to speak was very much to quickly tag into her issues around they will hit me with tribe and ethnicity if they can't hit me for my skirt and thighs or beauty or whatever, and to say that other times I have been called an agent of imperialism. You're not African enough, you're an African women don't do this. And the idea that if they can't deal with a woman, an African woman standing up in her own right, on her own terms, as an African, strong, beautiful, bold woman resetting the agenda, that then they try to alienate us as if we are, as if it's strange and foreign to fight for liberties, for freedom. And these are very African values. And I think that in terms of asserting my Africanness, reminding people about my Ugandanness. The point about research is important for those of us who are privileged enough to have access to education. Get your facts right. And for me, everything I've done when I'm told, but that is not African. Women don't undress in protest. I'm like, hey, do you know Wangari Maathai? History is important for us as women, calling other women to the front line of whatever struggle, whatever cause it is, because those who don't want us to advance women's issues or whatever other issues we are interested in will try to kill history and to make us forget the important tools that were used by other African women. You know, if it's not historical, then the comparative analysis. In my country, there are poor old women for whom land was an issue. The government was grabbing their land and selling it to investors. And these land grabs were military. And when I was told, Stella Nyanzi, African women do not undress in protest, I said, but look, the women of our power, elderly, beautiful women, bold, crass, brass women, took off their clothes, exposed their long black breasts, bit their breasts, and spread their legs. And these are typical African women. And then I was told they are very poor. You are educated. Elite women don't do this. And then this sudden fragmentation and division is brought on board. Elite women do this, poor women do this. Privileged women do this, underprivileged women do this. And so I think for me that it's important to call on historical research to remind ourselves of strong, powerful women. I like what Jirotich said about her ancestors, the strong women in her lineage, to draw for ourselves resources that make meaning for us and advance our causes. And sometimes it is a very solitary, lonely journey. I'm very grateful that at different episodes in my life, I've had strong men and women and queer folk behind me for the different causes I've stood for. Not everybody has journeyed with me all the way. People come and go, come and go. Sometimes it's very lonely. Sometimes we're a whole gang of feminist ninjas doing feminist things to change the world. But what keeps me going is sometimes to look in books and see what did those who came before us do. What are other people in Liberia and Libya and Sudan and South Africa doing? And then to make that my own knowledge, my own sort of reservoir of strength when things fail. And so I just wanted to quickly peg that onto what Jerotich said, and maybe for the point about uteruses, that they call us hysterical when we do women things, but sometimes they punish us with the fruit of our uteruses, right? They shame us because of our uteruses. In my case, when I was in prison, I was tortured and I lost my unborn baby. And most women in the feminist movement in Uganda said to me, "You are a bad mother. How can you put Uganda and your struggle for whatever it is, political rights and liberation, ahead of your responsibility and as a mother?" And I thought, these are women who should understand the values that I'm fighting for, the freedoms I'm fighting for, who should understand that as a woman in prison, the conditions of prison are such that prison was made for men, not women. Do not punish me. Before the men came to condemn and criticize me, it was other women who were re-punishing me after I had lost my baby. And so to say that our uteruses sometimes can be used to stand in the way of advancing our cause. They say to us, "You're a mother, you can't do this. You're a mother because you went to prison and left your children. You're a mother. Are you leaving your children behind when you're in exile?" And I think for me that the idea that Jero Teach again introduced about being focused on the mission ahead is important. Decide what your cause is. Yes, have a strategy, but know how to commit to that cause until you see the fruition, achievement, actualization of that which you dream for. That's important.
Dr. Stella, thank you. I notice we have so many gentlemen, but they're quite quiet through our discussion. I would be very interested to hear from some of the gentlemen we have here. What are your thoughts about women in leadership? And also just hearing about your thoughts about the stereotypes that are imposed on women. These women who have been talking today, some of them, like I mentioned, this discussion is based on one of the documentary series that we've been running as Mwanzo TV. It's dubbed Shangazi Power. Shangazi Power, just highlighting different women who have made great contribution in their respective countries. We love the discussion as it is going on. And again, I say, I would be very interested to hear from the men who are part of this discussion. Many of you are quite quiet. We want to hear from you. What do men think about women in leadership? What do men think about, the ability of women to be steers of change and to give, that much desired leadership? We have in Kenya where we have Martha Karua, who's, trying to vie for at least, get into that position of the deputy president as a running mate. And perhaps, and this is not the first time she's trying to get into that all powerful position, because again, like we've mentioned today, the perception of women in leadership, the perception of where women belong, the stereotypes, were they there? And I know we've discussed that. So I would be very interested to hear from some of the gentlemen who are here. I know Wanjeri uh, is here with us. Wanjeri Nderu, I've seen you want to give some contribution to this discussion. I'm really, really happy to see you here. Wanjeri is also part of the Linda Katiba team in Kenya that was very, very powerful in standing against the passing of the Building Bridges initiative that, more so to speak, would have brought some sense of retrogression constitutionally in Kenya. And she's just one of the many women. Of course, Jerotitse is part of the Linda Katiba team. And Wanjeri, if we can just get some comment from you. I know you want to give us one or two thoughts about the discussion today. Go ahead.
Leah, sorry, I have my hand up, if that's okay. I also wanted to quickly interject to say that we would also like to hear from Aikande as well, who is up. So thank you. Just wanted to point that out. Wanjeri, go ahead.
Oh, hi, hello. Sorry, I'm a bit under the weather. Thank you for. I got the invite yesterday, but I wasn't sure I'm going to make it because I have a very, very bad flu going on. But I wasn't expecting to speak. But now that I'm here, might as well. I love what I'm hearing from you, women. It's always powerful to hear women like you, women I admire every time, follow and work with, say some of these things that need to be said as loudly as you're saying it. I think, just to be short, the reason they fear us is because they know our bodies are our weapons, our voices are our weapons, our wombs are our weapons. Men want to put us in a space where we feel inferior because they see we are special in a way. We have life-giving properties. We are beings that have been created in a way that let me just give an example. In my community, I come from the Kikuyu community, and we are a very matriarchal community. And from time immemorial, the women who would speak in the community are the ones who'd be listened to. A woman's voice is heard. A woman's nakedness is seen, and it makes the people who are against what it is that we believe in uncomfortable. If you look at the freedom, the men who were imprisoned in Kenya during the Moi era, And we had issues where we had mothers going to Uhuru Park and stripping naked and going on hunger strike until they removed their clothes, is when their sons and their husbands were removed from those prison cells for fighting for what it is we are calling quote unquote democracy now. So I will echo what Gerald Teach had said earlier. We in Kenya live in an illusion of democracy. It is not true that we are free just because we say all the things that we need to say on social media. And people at times, unlike Uganda, where we see Museveni going at Stella and and his people going after Stella openly, in Kenya, it is done so covertly. It is done so what we call chini ya maji, where they come after you as an individual. They affect you as a person. They make sure that the whatever it is they come for you as a person. I have had to flee this country, but you see, because my pain has been personal, people will not think that the government is coming after me because it is not a publicized event. Unlike what we see in Uganda, where they take you and they put you in prison, and we know openly it is a society that you're not allowed to speak. It is the same thing in Kenya, just that the attacks that we get are very, very personalized. We tend, Stella, Karibu, you've been to Kenya. We've met before, but you might not remember me. But the fireplace that you talk about at Cherotich's place, we laugh a lot when we get attacked online, and our bodies are used as attack avenues, and they're always targeting our breasts. I remember I was told once to take my overused vagina. I have 3 children, and I was told, take my overused vagina and my overused breasts, or something to that effect, back home and breastfeed my kids who are already grown up. And to them, they felt like they have insulted us. But when you focus on your goal and you keep being consistent in whatever it is that you're saying, it doesn't matter how much matusi they send our way. We somehow just manage to raise above it, laugh around about it, and move on. And that is what scares them. We see men can say a statement, a political statement, but when a woman says the same exact statement, it gets an audience, because the female voice is a weapon that scares these men. And that is why we are always going to be under attack. But that doesn't mean that we are going to let them cover over us. That doesn't mean that we are going to make us cover. That doesn't mean that they're going to put us in a space where we are uncomfortable and we're not going to speak. The more they attack, the more we use our voices. And Stella, kudos to you for stripping. I don't think I would be able to do that. And every time I see you do those things, I'm like, this is my girl, this is my girl. And when we support you on social media, we also attacked you mothers. And what are you teaching your children? But it is because of what you do that we see the changes that we have been able to see, even if they're not that much yet. Your effort is being felt worldwide. You're encouraging so many other women. So I am happy to make those remarks, and I'm still going to be here listening in. Sorry, I couldn't have been a speaker as requested earlier. As you can hear, I'm still struggling with my voice, but asanteni sana for having me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And I see that actually what has happened is Leah has dropped, but I'm sure she will be back. While we're going on, I just wanted also to very quickly ask Fatma to sort of walk us through a little bit about the word shangazi. As you can see, actually, if you visit Fatma, you'll see that she put up her name. Leah, can you? Yeah. So you see that Fatma actually calls herself shangazi. And just, I think it's very important to get like a feedback, Fatma, where does the name Shangazi come from in order to create the context?
So Shangazi is in Swahili, Shangazi is the paternal aunt. So we have different names for paternal aunts and maternal aunts. Maternal aunts are called mama mdogo, meaning small mom, or mama mkubwa, the bigger mom. So depending on where your mother falls in the hierarchy, in the family hierarchy. If your mother is a second born and she's got an elder sister, the elder sister will be called your mama mkubwa, your bigger mom. But paternalistic, we call our aunts shangazi, and there's no big shangazi or bad shangazi. And the shangazi in the Swahili culture is a very powerful woman, because she's the only woman who can actually put your father in his place. She generally grew up with your father, and she's either adored by your father because she's the younger sister, or she is highly respected by your father because she's the elder sister, and in our societies, she helped bring up your father when your grandmother was busy. Okay, so she's highly respected by your father, and we normally go running to the shangazi to put our case when we want our fathers to do as we please. So shangazis are taken as substitute fathers in a paternalistic society, in our paternalistic society, and she's very powerful. Now, what happened was, I think it was in 2018, Magufuli, 2017 or 2018, I can't remember when, but there was a little bit of a rebellion amongst the CCM MPs who came from Mtwara region, which is the cashew nut region, because Magufuli had raided subsidies for farming implements for the cashew nut industry. And cashew nuts are generally grown in the southern coastal region of Tanzania. And it impacted their earnings. And there was a bit of a rebellion amongst MPs and CCM MPs because they rightly so, they advocated for the rights of the cashew nut farmers who were their voters and their constituencies. So Magufuli then turned around and said, I've had enough of your noise, and I'm going to start off by beating up your shangazis. So he threatened to beat up the shangazis of the MPs. In particular, he stated that he would commence with the Prime Minister's shangazi. So I was really astounded by the statement. And it really irritated me. And when he made this statement, as is common in Africa, the people in the crowd, his audience, started applauding and laughing. And I thought, well, why would he want to be violent and brutal against women? This is a scrap fight amongst boys. He wants the money. This little boy who has been given the presidency wants money that doesn't belong to him. He's basically grabbed it and taken it into Central Treasury. The other boys are saying, let's have it for the farmers. And he's then turning around and saying, shut up. And if you don't shut up, I'm going to beat up your shangazis. Why don't they beat each other up? Why do they have to beat up the shangazi? What have we got to do with it? And why does violence have to be meted out on women? This really irritated me because it took GBV to the national level. And I tell you something, during Magufuli's era, GBV increased in Tanzania because of this. He was one of the biggest perpetrators of GBV. And he did this through rhetoric, and he continuously committed these gross acts of violence against women in this country. And what made me absolutely sick was the fact that there were women in the audience, so-called educated, and Stella, you'll understand, these educated women who wear their suits and they're suited and they're booted and they wear their little high heels and their vitengas and they go there and they clap. And they were clapping and laughing as and they're just marionettes really, as he said these words which were violent and committed violence against their sex. And he did this to bring down the most respected symbol of female power in our society, which is the shangazi. And I thought, well, this is not acceptable. And I remember discussing it with a few men, and the men couldn't understand it. Well, I think they did understand it, but they pretended not to understand it. They said, oh, well, no, he's just joking, It's just a joke. And I said, well, how come I don't find it funny? Am I the only person who finds it irritating? Oh, but Fatma, you're just too sensitive about these things. I'm sensitive about violence committed against women. And then there's some other women, there were women I discussed and said, oh yeah, but these are just Sukuma jokes, because he came from the Sukuma tribe. And apparently these are great Sukuma jokes. And I said, so in your tribe, violence against women is laughed about? Because I don't find it funny. I find it disgusting. And so I thought, well, all right, if you're going to commit violence against women, then let me tell you something. I have brothers. I have 2 younger brothers. And in my family, I'm a shangazi. They've got children. And I'm highly respected and loved by their children because I'm the eldest in my family. We're a family of 6. I'm the eldest, and I'm a shangazi. And, my father said, we once were sitting and discussing our family, and my father said he had wanted a boy, and he got me, and he was very happy. And then he wanted a boy again, and he got my sister, Amina. And he said he was a little disappointed because he wanted a boy. And then he got the 3rd child, and it was a boy, my brother. And then he said, but you know what? I am so pleased I had 2 girls, because actually we're like the vacuum cleaners in the family. We sort of clean everything up, We don't, if something happens in the family, we're told about it. We have to go in and clean up, and no, this is not right. We've got to do this. We've got to do this. So he said, thank goodness I had girls, because the first 2 were girls, because really you take care of all these problems, the family issues and family problems. So he's grateful. And men tend to sort of act like ostriches, at least in my family. But the girls sort of, we get to the bottom of the problem, deal with it, and we don't leave any stone. We don't leave any stone unturned. So it was a really nice thing for my father to say, but we had to work for it, and that's the sad thing. I find that even when he said that, our value was based on the work we do for the family.
True.
And we are very valuable. And here comes this little boy who's been given the keys to the armory. And he then turns around, and I call him that, this Magufuli, who was given the keys to the armory by very irresponsible men and other boys. And he wants to beat us up. So I said, well, I'm a shangazi, and I'm very respected in my family. I'm respected by my nieces and my nephews, and they call me shangazi. And come on then. I said, I'm a shangazi. Start with me. Try and beat me up then.
Well, he did come after you, though.
He did come after me because I dared him. I did poke at the bear. But the point is, I was not going to sit back and allow a little boy who'd been given keys to the armory by some irresponsible boys who didn't think about the future of this country to continue his aggression against women. And so I stood up and I said, no, I'm a shangazi. Don't you dare. Don't even think about it. You don't have the right to go around saying you're going to beat us up because you boys are scrapping over some money. You're fighting, and it's all about rent-seeking and fighting over money. Just typical, because that's what they do. They just fight over these the bits and bobs and money and rent-seeking and rents. And in the end, when they don't get along, who do they want to beat up? The women. So they don't even have, and this is what disgusted me. This little boy didn't even have the gumption to go into the bull ring with the other boys and fight it out. He didn't have the mettle for that. What he wanted to do was to punish the women for what he believed was the other little boys' faults. And I thought, no, I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm a shangazi and I've had enough. Stop this nonsense. You've been running this country for the last 60 years. You're a nuisance. You're a pain in the neck. You haven't, we're still poor. And it's not enough. You're still fighting over scraps. And you want to beat us up? Come on. Come on, enough already. And that's what made me say, I've had enough.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fatma. I think it was very important to put the context around that, because you see, most of the times we take, and I loved what Stella said, that we just sort of take whatever stereotype or whatever hurt or abuse they hurl at us and we own it. And I just loved, whatever conversation has been coming out so far. And I think that is very important. And I see we also have Aikande. Aikande Kwayu, many people may not know you. I want you to introduce yourself a little bit. You've done some really great work in research. And you've also done a lot of research around more of sociological but political connections as well around in Tanzania. And I think it's very important what Fatma just said, that the role of women, whether it is in the political sphere or in the social economic sort of struggles for rights and freedoms, has been. So I would be really interested to hear your take on this.
Thank you very much, Maria and everybody. It's very nice to be here, and I'm really humbled to be in the same panel with people like Stella Nyanzi, who I admire a lot, and others from East Africa. I wanted to, let me introduce myself. As Maria said, I do research. My background is political science, but I try to do applied research whereby I look at different spaces, especially in the context of Tanzania, where in the last 7 years we've been restricted a lot. Political spaces has been restricted. And my interest went into looking at how people try to use social media to express different political views and to mobilize, organize, and to speak up to enhance their voices. And from that research and experience, led me to realize the power of shangazis, as Fatma has explained. So I tried as much as possible to participate, to engage, and to just learn more about how women are using social media, be it Instagram, Twitter, and also Facebook to some extent, into raising voices, speak about politics, and many other issues relating to justice in the country. So, for example, we have seen women really making difference and bringing people together to speak or to react or to mobilize. Maybe not very relevant example at the moment, but for example, 3 or 4 years ago, Mange Kimambi used Instagram to really speak against injustice in the country. But at the moment, we have Maria, who organizes Maria Spaces, but also different tweets, hashtags, and this has not started recently. Even during Kikwete time, I remember SIM tax, and I remember this was one of the first things that made me know Maria. But also Fatma, how she has used Twitter to really mobilize people to speak and to speak her voice and to be really an example, and many other. So there is a role that women play even in restricted spaces, in a way that people come to appreciate the power of speaking up. And I think as much as we are still struggling as women, there is a lot of appreciation, even if it's not said, that we are actually moving ahead, that we are making changes, and we are triggering discussion that is very important. So I'm still learning, and I'm still very much trying to, very much aware of the difficulties and challenges that we face. Today, in this discussion, I wanted to contribute and to encourage or to comment on something that is called divine violence. I thought about this especially when I listened to Stella Nyanzi in the beginning when she said women in parliament act as if they have penises. This is striking because I think we need to reject these women in the sense that even if they are legal, we need to show that they're illegitimate. They are not representing as women, and they should not use women as platform or women quota as platform for them to enhance or to um, uh, to keep on to keep on discriminating other women, because we have examples, for example, in Tanzania, whereby we know women who don't stand, who are in position, but they don't stand for any women right. They stand for their party, but they are very partisan and whatsoever. So we need to really, even if they are legal and we have a constitution that give them legality to be in those positions, to be our representative, we need to reject them in a way that this divine violence says, even if something is legal but is against justice, we need to fight it. So we should not care that um, just because they were selected through their party framework, that we need to accept that, okay, we have women representatives in the parliament. No, we need to shame them, we need to speak out against them, we need to mobilize and to refuse this kind of selection of women into parliament. And of course, in Tanzania, I think as we are trying to push for katiba mpya or constitutional reform, we need to have this as one of the key points. We don't want women in the parliament who are selected through the party structure, the party framework. We want women who, we as women, we can formulate our own framework through which we need women who will go into those spaces and will really speak for women. So these are some of the things I wanted to share, and I'm still learning, and I'm here listening to the various contributions from very strong and powerful women. So thank you very much, Maria, for this opportunity, and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, are you back? Are you stable now?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, okay.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I was just holding it down. Okay, go on.
Thank you. I kind of thank you so much for your remarks there. Very, very, very strong remarks about, the women who are not in parliament or whatever position where they can actually help young girls and other women to rise and just have a better life. They should be questioned on why they are there in the first place. Jerotich, I know in Kenya, we are seeing billboards of various women rather, who want to run for the women rep positions, not just in Nairobi County, the capital city of Kenya, but also just across the country. And I know Ikande has mentioned, when we are electing women to represent, the voice of other women and just the voice even of young boys and men, they should go through some kind of vetting. What can you say about the manner in which women representatives are elected in your country?
That's a very loaded question in terms of the number of directions. Can you hear me? It
Yes,
doesn't
I
seem
can.
like
I
you can
can
hear
hear
me.
you.
Okay, because
Can
I
hear you.
can't see my mic thingy moving. But it's quite loaded because it can go in many different directions. But one of the things that I think about when I think of oppression and oppressive people is somebody who is an oppressor doesn't have to be female or male. An oppressor is an oppressor, no matter their sex. And for me, when I think of women in positions of power and decision making, who, no matter whether they feel they have now evolved to the point that they can now bamba with the big boys and they can sit there and behave like they are now men over there in parliament and so on and so forth. I always ask myself, if you're elected as a woman rep, what is it that you're there to do? We have so many women reps in Kenya who are elected, and they've spent the last 5 years. Actually, let me not say so many women. I say proportionally, and I don't have all the data. And remember, I said I have to operate on the basis of facts. But I would say there's quite a number that I'm familiar with who disappeared from the day they were elected until last month or 2 months ago when they're back on the scene saying, we are here again for you to elect us. Drop a few token sanitary towels here, or some assistance here or there, or take some basins to some maternity hospital somewhere, and then say, we are here again to represent you. I think those of us who are voters have to understand clearly, when you have somebody who is running as a woman rep, what does that mean? She's a woman, yes. She's a representative. She's a member of parliament. She is there because there's also the issue of the two-thirds gender rule that this country has been unable to fulfill effectively. And this is an affirmative move. But while she's also there, affirmatively, it behooves her to behave in a manner that will promote and push a gender equity agenda. That doesn't always happen. That said, I think, I see some of the women who are running as for this particular position. They are often highly mocked on social media. There's so much shaming. There are women with, and many of us African women, myself included, have sizable posterior extremities. And when they dance in political rallies or different places, there's always some kind of shaming that is happening and saying, oh, these women are sexualizing themselves. These women are incapable of comporting themselves correctly. They're there as the little sex objects for the party, and they're told to go and titillate and tantalize and entertain the masses. And then the real men step up to the podium now to start speaking about serious things. I think on the one hand, people should leave all women's posterior extremities alone. Your body is your body. You did not ask to be born with a particular shape or a particular, protrusions and so on and so forth. Your body is your body. But I think also there has to be a deeper examination as to what it is we are actually there doing in parliament as representatives. I remember my mother throughout the 80s and the 90s, and I told the story in the Shangazi series, throughout the 80s and the 90s, as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a teacher, as a professional, as an activist, went for it 100% and was saying she will be a representative on behalf of all the women and men and boys and girls who are not represented effectively by then her male incumbent. And not one moment in my life do I remember my mom having to shake her bum bum in public so that she could say, vote for me. So I think there's also some way in which we have somehow, and this is not gaslighting, but kind of drifted into a narrative where rather than using our bodies as weapons, as tools of strength, of integrity, of beauty, of solidness, we have somehow drifted into the slay narrative where at the end of the day, people are using us women and our bodies left, right, and center as they see fit. And we're falling for that. We're falling for that gimmick. And I think it behooves us as women once again to take charge of our bodies, own our bodies, say, this is my body. But what I'm here to do is to represent men, women, boys, girls who need my representation, and at every moment be cognizant of the fact that discrimination still runs rampant, that abuse, violence, hostility, misogyny, being left behind is still the order of the day, and we're not out of the woods yet. We have a lot of work yet to do. So it's about finding that balance, and we as the electorate, we need to figure out not just who our woman rep is. I would go ahead and argue, Leah, and say we have to look and see who is our MCA, who is our woman rep, who is our member of parliament, who is running for governor, who is running for the senatorial position, who is running for president for that matter, and who is the team that is surrounding that particular presidential candidate. We need to be more conscious as we push and use our vote to make a difference in the country. So I would put women reps, the woman rep position in that space as well. But I still think whenever you find yourself elected as a woman rep, you have a task ahead of you, and we're going to call you to order. And also the women who happen to be members of parliament, or women who happen to be governors, or women who happen to be senators, or women who happen to be presidents or deputy presidents. We will continually call you to order, because to whom much is given, much is expected. I think the men think that they're just there by default and by design, and it is their divine right to be in positions of power. And it is for us also to begin to elect more women into those positions of power and say, actually, it's not your divine right. We can be equitable, and in fact, we can have as many women or more, because women understand how the shoe pinches and where the pain is felt. And when you have to bury a child, or you have to cook stones to fool your children into thinking, as they're hearing the rattling of the stones in a sufuria with water, that you're actually cooking supper and you're putting your children to bed hungry. So women really need to come front and center, notwithstanding the fact that there is continuous constitutional disobedience when it comes to the 2/3 gender rule in Kenya. I still encourage women to come out en masse. It's not easy. Vote for the right people, vote for the right woman rep, and you yourself consider getting into a position of power. We cannot also just be on the sidelines forever saying, oh no, we are not happy, we are marginalized. We have to come front and center and say, ninajitokezea, and I'm coming out to say I'm going to stand for this particular position. So that's what I'd have to say, Leah.
Thank you so much, Heritage. I see Maria has a comment that she wants to make. Maria, you can take over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah. I just wanted to point out a very important, because you were saying, teach about facts. The Global Media Monitoring Project actually did look at the role of women and stereotypes, and what they found that in the 15 years, we actually have regressed in media all around the world. The stereotypes have increased and they have been reinforced again and again. Imagine, for 15 years, we've not made any progress, and in some cases we've regressed. So I completely agree with you that it may be that our mothers actually were doing a much better job than we were comparatively. So I just wanted to make that point. And I also wanted to point out, Leah, that we have also a male speaker finally.
Finally, we see one male speaker. That's Ndasoko. Can you hear me? Hello, Ndasoko Junior, can you hear me?
Hello, Maria. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you
Yes.
so much. Finally, we get to hear from a gentleman. We've heard from the ladies, but we'd like to hear from you, Ndasoko. Just represent
Uh,
the men in here. Most of them seem
no,
to
no,
be
no, no.
very quiet.
I'm not.
Let's
I'm
hear
not.
from you.
I'm not representing the many. I'm just representing my own opinion.
Okay,
It's not
fantastic.
good
Go
to talk
ahead.
on behalf of the people even you never met. So I think I have just heard everyone the opinion you have just given and the suggestion, but also I think the feeling around the women movement in Africa, but also in the global, and the political system we have in our countries on how they limit or allow women or to participate in the civic rights movement in our countries. But I think one thing I would love to say, if we really want to emphasize on how we can enhance this freedom for women around fighting or addressing their right and freedom of in participating in the political and civic space, I think we need to see the overall process of getting the leadership within a country. So I know in Kenya now you are in the preparation for the campaign towards the August general elections. At least your 2010 constitution allow an independent electoral candidate to vie for any post which they think they fit in. But for the case of Tanzania, the processes begin within the party primaries or the party nominations, where a person has to show aspiration or has to show the interest. So our question which we need really to ask around this, who sit within the panels maybe to allow or maybe to vote for these women to vie for these positions. You'll find in most of the political parties are the men, who sit within the panels to elect or to propose such a man or such a single candidate for a female to contest for a certain constituency within the Tanzanian jurisdiction of our electoral systems. But again, how is the process itself competitive? Because we are talking about the financial muscles. We also have the special seat system in Tanzania within the political parties, which they also have to appoint the number of women to represent in the parliament according to the number of the votes they have got during the general election who are in the panel. So I think if we really need to address the issues, for me, before we go to the political debate in terms of the political or public contestants, we need to go beyond that and see how are the primary processes begin and how women are being involved within the party. And if also we need to address the issue of having the independent electoral candidate for our constituencies, for our member of parliament and in Kenya.
Hello.
Yeah, I think he must have dropped.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes,
just go
sorry
on.
about
Let's
that.
go on. Okay.
Well, I think some very interesting insight there from Dasoko just about how women can break through the barriers. Um, I think I would be very happy to hear from Fatma. I know in Tanzania there's been a lot of push for constitutional change in Tanzania. And some of the key issues there is just about the kind of power that is given to the presidency, being able to make certain decisions that more or less have not been very beneficial to the country. And of course, that has been the case in other African countries. We can look at Uganda, a president that has been at the helm of power for so long. And of course, in Kenya, the issue of the Building Bridges initiative, of which Jared Teach was part of the group that was able to, make sure that the Building Bridges initiative document did not sail through. But Fatma, what really is the importance of having women in these spaces of the political spaces and any spaces that have to do with governance? What role would you say the women can play in these spaces?
Well, I'm going to say something which I believe is quite evident. The role that women should play in those spaces is the role that we require of any diversification or of a space. If you have, for example, people representing the LGBT community, what you would expect is that they bring a perspective which is different from the mainstream male perspective. And you will find that they will bring a perspective from, let's say, the gay community. And it's the same with the governance, women in governance. What we expect is a perspective from uh, a female perspective, and a recognition that our needs are, although human needs are universal, there are some needs that we have that men don't have. An example would be the fact that we have a uterus does make us different. So when a man says to us, you are not allowed to go to school anymore because your uterus happened to catch my semen when it fertilized one of your eggs, and it got implanted in your uterus and became a baby, you no longer have the right to go to school. That is a male perspective. It's not a female perspective. The female perspective would be, well, why not? It's only a uterus, for God's sake, And after all, it was your sperm. You were part of this too. And if you can continue going to school and being educated, why not me? It doesn't make me stupid. It doesn't make me, being pregnant doesn't make me fail an exam. Why are you judging me by standards which are not the same? Now, in our case in Tanzania, We had a female minister of education at the material time. She kowtowed to the male perspective. She kowtowed to the male perspective. She never, and this is a prime example, she never stood up and said, no, just because I've got a uterus doesn't mean that I'm not entitled to an education like you. She kowtowed. She actually accepted this male perspective. And she never discussed it from a female perspective. So we don't need women like that in power. We certainly don't. You know, they don't assist us. They don't assist the female voice. They don't bring in diversification. And they don't even understand diversification. So the question then, a lot of people argue now that Magufuli is gone, the little boy has gone, the little boy who was given the big guns has gone. They will argue, oh, but he was very scary. You know, he had the big guns. Yes, ladies, he did have the big guns. But there were some of us who didn't give a damn. We stood up to him and we said, no, no. And you could have done the same. You chose not to do the same. And that is the difference between us and you. It was your choices. You made those choices. So don't sit there and excuse the bad choices you made and claim that you had fear. Do you think we didn't fear? Do you think there is courage without fear? There is no courage if you don't experience fear. Courage is only possible in the face of fear. So don't make excuses for yourselves, ladies. You failed us. You didn't represent our voices. And you failed us because you didn't have the courage to stand up for the female voice.
Thank you, Fatma. Thank you so much for those remarks. One of the things, and I think I can hear what you're saying, Fatma, there is women not shying away from being vocal against what we can call injustices and perhaps ills perpetrated by various governments. I think one question I'd like to hear from you ladies, when we talk about taking over those positions and being vocal and advocating for the rights and freedoms of the citizenry in your respective countries, what can you say about breaking through these limitations? Because we talk about governance systems that have not been very supportive of women in leadership, and even women just coming out and exploring their potential in leadership. I'll just throw that question to you, Dr. Stella. What you think about breaking through the limitations? How can women break through these so-called limitations that hinder them from exploring their potential and even just, getting on these leadership roles that can help change their countries?
Right. So creativity is important, I think, to innovate constantly, to be creative. But in order to be creative, one must understand the context. And so initially, study the context in which one is operating. I think that if one wants to participate in a boardroom or a civil society organization or a parliament or a court or a hospital or a village committee, that the circumstances are different. In one case, it may be religious values and attitudes that are hindering this effective participation. In another, it could be patriarchy. In another, it could be a lack of role models. So I think initially to study the context and know what the obstacles are in order to come up with a strategy, right? So I think the issue around strategic participation, to be strategic in what we do and to give thought and planning is always important. That's one. I think that so creativity and innovation in response to the circumstances pertaining, if one is in energy, the issues will be different to one who's doing reproductive health, for example. Secondly, I think that resource redistribution, there are things we can't do without resources. So identifying the resources that are necessary, finding ways of getting those resources in order to do work. I know some women who have brilliant ideas, but they are not doing or implementing these things because of lack of resources. Sometimes the resource could be mentorship or leadership or guidance. Sometimes it's peers and support. Sometimes it's finances. Sometimes it's exposure. Sometimes so identify the resources that are necessary for you to be effective in your role and then go out and get them. I always begin often from a place or position of not having what it takes to be effective, but I've learned that collaboration. So the third thing for me would be, in terms of getting these resources to implement our strategies, collaborate, 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 network, collaborate, partner with both people of like mind, but also sometimes it's important to partner with the enemy in order to take resources away from them. I have found so the issue around women and effective participation, sometimes the gatekeepers are men who have to open these doors for us, do the necessary collaboration and partnership in order to get to those spaces. I've forgotten what your question was, but I think you were asking how do we penetrate these spaces and do effective play effective roles as women. So I think when we are there, to not be afraid is important. In the absence of mentors, in the absence of examples, in the absence of role models, I think it's important to be courageous. I forget who talked about courage. I think two of the shangazis on the space talked about courage and how courage is important in the face of fear. That to be experimental, to be tentative, to be innovative, and to keep trying, pushing this the boundaries and doing new things for new uninvolved people, people who are left out, people in the margins, people who are not seen, people whose voices are not heard, issues that are not heard. And I think for me that uh, that that particular strategy makes us troublesome. We trouble the waters. We bash and smash the status quo. We break tables and create our own flows to engage from. And I think for me to be unafraid and then when we are doing this, not to do this alone. One of the things I'm learning to do is to build others, to build peer support groups, but also to mentor younger people who are coming up, such that in the event of my going away, whether through death or prison or exile or ill health, all of these are experiences that I have recently come into direct contact with. It's my lived experience that people die and then suddenly we don't know how to take the mission forward. You go to jail, you leave a country, or you're confronted with illness that is debilitating and one cannot perform. So but to have others, to have clones, but also disciples and disciples is the wrong word, but others following with your values, with your enabling, such that one, you're not a one woman show, but two, in the event that you're taken out of the picture, there are others who will continue the vision in alternative ways. So I've spoken a lot kind of in abstract ways, but I'm
Yes.
the person who thinks abstractly.
Thank you so much, Stella. And I remember when we were doing the interview for the docu-series that covered your story, Stella, one of the things that really struck me was the fact that you said there are moments you did feel fear, moments when you knew you might get out of your house and you don't know what will happen to you. And of course, one of the things that you mentioned in your story is the fact that you were abducted and your family is looking for you. The next thing is they find out you're now in a police station, and some of these experiences, of course, affecting your family. And I know some of the things you also mentioned is just the feeling of you're not there for your children. So it's not all easy, is it, Stella?
I mean, there's a cost to pay always, right? I
Yes.
think that anybody who thinks that participating in destabilizing the status quo, participating in redistributing power, confronting rigid structures of oppression, anyone who thinks that that is easy, it's facile, is joking. Sadly, that you're a big joke. The presence of um, punitive, brutal, violent, um, excessive state power, in my case, has always, threatened whatever it was. And so I appreciate the Shangazi who mentioned that, of course, we are fearful, but we call for courage. In other places, I mean, in other times, it hasn't been brutal militant state power, and it has been more issues around shaming, alienation, ostracization. There goes that woman who is different from us. There goes that woman who thinks she knows it all. There goes that woman who is never contented. There goes that woman who's asking for so much, and that ostracization or stigma that gets attached to tree shakers and mountain movers can be silencing and debilitating as much as prison and getting beaten up by the police can. And so
Thank
I
you.
think that the dangers are always present, but to keep going and forging ahead. And that is why, for me, working in isolation is no longer an option, but I'm learning to build communities of support from a small circle that's very intimate all the way going outer. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll just take a comment there from Maria before we go to Happiness and Marando. I do see the two of you want to contribute to the discussion today. Maria, you can go ahead before I go to Happiness.
Yes, no, very quickly, I just wanted to say about the community. Actually, that is what Shangazi Power is about. Shangazi Power actually is a sisterhood. So what we're doing today is I would just like to call on everyone, including not only women, but men, whoever feels that they would like to be part of the civil rights struggles, freedom struggles, and support the women who are participating in this, then I would like to ask everybody to follow them, extend support if they're within your own country, but also to extend support outside East Africa. I think that's very important. And I must say that one of the things that has kept me personally, and I believe also some of the sisters that we've been together in the struggle, that has kept us sane has been our sisterhood, has been our bond. You can sort of call and say, oh my God, this is what happened to me today, and you will not be judged. You'll be able to just, sometimes even tell her things that you might not be able to tell other people in the family. So I just wanted to emphasize what Stella said, that it's very, very important to have this circle of trust and to have a lot of support.
Thank you so much, Maria. I just want to throw it over now to Happiness. I know we've had a lot of comments around, and I like what you've mentioned, Maria, the sisterhood, and that's what Shangazi Power is all about, highlighting the stories of women who have made great contribution in their respective countries. And I like that we've mentioned support, and of course, just many more things we can talk about before we go away. I know Happiness wants to give a comment here and just make a contribution to the discussion. Happiness, if you're there.
Well, Maria just took my thought, because that's one of the things I was just going to come and talk about, the importance of sisterhood. Because as she said, I think sometimes you just need that voice of reasoning, that affirmation that what you're doing, what you're talking about, your cause, and what you believe in is relevant. Because, as you know, that we are always marginalized as women. And this has happened so many times. I can tell you at times when I just need to talk to somebody, and I've cried in Maria's presence, just saying that I feel very frustrated, I feel not listened, I feel confused, because that's something that the society, it's so embedded in the society, because you get to be called all these names. And at times, no matter how strong you are, and I'm a very strong person, but at the same time you pause and think, am I being insane? Am I being defined truthfully that that's who I am. So I mean, for me, what's so important, and I think that for East Africa, I think it's important that we form some kind of a sisterhood. And I've seen the problems, the plight of women are really similar. All over Africa, if I say. But one of the things is that we miss, and it's funny because I constantly uh, Daddy Hope when he tweets something about Zimbabwe, and I've been in Zimbabwe, so so most of the time I'm like, oh my God, and I tag Mshaba, I tag Maria and Fatma and say, isn't this happening in Tanzania? Isn't this the same things that is happening in Tanzania? So one of the things that I wish that we can all come together as Shangazis and make sure that there are certain issues that are when are being discussed, it doesn't matter, especially for my Tanzanian sisters. I think for us as Tanzanians, we are so confined with partisan that we lose the focus and to focus on fighting fighting the women's issues. There's so many issues that if we could really block that voice from that whole chauvinism from men, there's so many issues that we all as women they affect us. So it's very important that it's sad to see, for instance, one of the things that is going on in Tanzania right now is the gender card. Most of the time, when you even try, like I have to go to gauge everything that I say when I'm trying, to write, when I'm trying to talk about my president, just because the fact that she's a woman, and it shouldn't be that way. Because one of the things that we're missing is that it doesn't matter even if she's a leader and she's a woman. What is important is that are we giving her constructive criticism? She's not immune to be criticized, and I find it to be very hard because then you meet with these hardcore feminists who think that when you're criticizing the president, you're not being a feminist enough. So I think we have to be very. We also have to reflect and see that where does it is it applicable, where we can unite sensibly, because sometimes I think that there has to be a point of departure, that no matter how feminist we are, but the truth has to remain truth. When we talk about issues of human rights, if the issue of there are human rights abuse in our own space, no matter who's the leader, no matter who's leading at that point, we have to stand up firm and say, you know what, we cannot tolerate to see that these are happening in our country just based on the fact that at the moment the person who's leading is a woman. I think this is the right time, this is the right conversation, and we need to really form a strong unit of women, of Shangazi. If something is happening in Kenya that affects not only women but truly touch on human rights issues, we need to see that we address it. Either we're in Tanzania, either we're in Uganda, whatever platform we are in, we have to make sure that we talk about it, and if we tweet about it, we use whatever platform that we have. Because I think one of the things is that it's not by default that women are strong, but we have to remember this earth is where it is because of us women. We have been given, we have been blessed. We start life, and let's not forget that. I think most of the women who have children here will say, no matter what, I have 3 boys. Most of the time, I tell them, I know everything about you. So we have the strength, we have the power. Don't let anybody change that. Don't let anybody take that away. And I see so many times they will try to drag you down. But Shangazi power, that's all I had to say.
Thank you so much. Wonderful comments there. Let's hear from Marandu.
I appreciate the moment, the time you've given me to give two or three thoughts about this women ability to bring about the civil changes in society, the women freedom. And what I can observe is that women have one advantage, that their plight is the same almost throughout the world. They have several disadvantages which have been imposed upon them because of the system which men think they are superior to women. For instance, the issue of equal pay. Woman can be working in the same corporate or say the same institution, and they have the same ranking as men, same experience, same number of years, but the man will probably get paid as 100% of what the woman will be paid 75%. In some Western countries, they can say it's the negotiating power, but in some countries where there is a pay scale, maybe that cannot exist. But still, I see that this is something which all women, regardless of their party affiliation, like in Tanzania, for instance, if there is such a thing which is happening in the country, they can coalesce together and fight against that, because it doesn't matter whether you are a part, you belong to a certain uh, political organization or not. You still require that, or you desire that when you work somewhere with the men with the same experience, that you should get the same pay, regardless of what party are you, regardless of what kind of uh, party affiliation are you. So I think this issue of women rights and civil rights and ability to bring about social changes, it is more possible to women than men, because women have more things in common, regardless of other subgroups which divide them. Another issue I can see is also the issue of the suppressing behaviors in the society, such as that men think they have the right, not as a whole society, but even individual men think they have the right to impose things on women. Like you can go in the country of Tanzania in some rural or city areas and find some hooligans who are hollering at women based on what they just dressed. I think those are the issues which it doesn't matter what political affiliation you are. No, any woman would have uh, would like to be happy for her uh, choice of what she dress and how she uh, involve herself in the matters of the society to be dictated by a certain individual only because he's a man. Another issue is about the education. A lot of people think like that to educate a woman is just, or to allow the equal access to education to women is just like to do them favor. But women have the right, just like men, to have the access to good education and better life. And in fact, the society, Africa, especially African societies, think like women income or the knowledge is just a supplemental thing of that of a man in the society. But I think is, to me, I think is more significant that a woman is educated, because she's the one who have the bigger role in um taking care. And when I'm saying taking care, I'm not saying it's a small role. Taking care of the family is not a small role, or is not an inferior role to whatever the man is doing. Only because she is looking after the children, for instance, even if she's a manager somewhere, even if she's a doctor somewhere, the 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 ability to look after the family and raise the children and make them better in the society is not something which should be belittled. So when you deprive this woman of an education, of a better education, it means you are depriving the next generation of better members of the society, because they are the one who are involved in raising our families, in making sure the children are doing good at school. Let's say, for instance, if it doesn't matter the way the family setup is, not only in Tanzania, even in Europe, most of the time women, and I think it is like a biological and natural classification of our responsibilities. Most women are the one who look after the children, not because they are women, but that's the way it is naturally. So if you are depriving a woman the right of education, she is not going to know more about the health care of that child, the progress in the school, and so on and so forth. So the women need to coalesce together and form some kind of uh, few agendas which they can come together and demand as a nation or as a bigger society, to make sure that they have equal rights in the society, not only for the benefit of the women, but for the benefit of the entire nation. And the leaders who have foresight, they should know that
Thank you, Marat.
liberating women. Yes.
Thank you, Marandu. I would like to hear from Gerotich, because I think one of the things Marandu has mentioned there, and if I could just, cap it, is to say we should not think of the positions of women as being inferior. And of course, one other thing that Marandu has mentioned is women need to be recognized not just as caretakers, but that their role in society is not just being married or just having that social life, but even those roles in the society are still as important. Zero Teach, however, I'd like to know if there is a possibility that women can actually break from that perception they're giving in society, especially in African societies, where it's almost like a woman is said to be, hey, your end goal is this. Go to school, get married, get children, be a housewife. Anything other than that is now beyond what is the norm of African societies. How can women break out of that, especially in Africa, Teach?
Okay, thank you, Leah. You said, can women break out of this? My answer is yes, yes, of course. That's what so many of us are doing. So many of us who have gone before us have done, and we're doing it. Others are joining us, and we will continue to do it. I think, as honored to be a Shangazi alongside my fellow Shangazis this evening. Actually, it's a state of mind. It's not an honorific for tonight only. It is something that we will always be doing. As a Shangazi, what I would say for all women who are listening, and I see my sister Shefa is also part of this spaces, and somebody I also respect and admire a lot. So hi, good to see you, Shefa, and you still have a bottle waiting for you around the fire, the famous fire, where also Stella and all of you are super welcome to come and see me, and we can build our Shangazi network here and a community of women who support each other. I think one of the things I would say to all the women out there is we should continuously, and I remind myself, and we should keep reminding ourselves, not just preach at others, but tell it to ourselves as well. Never contribute to my own oppression inadvertently, or deliberately. Do not contribute. I will not contribute to my own oppression. I will use facts all the time when I want to challenge. And when I don't have the facts, I will go dig a little bit or find somebody who has the facts who will help me bolster and strengthen my point. I will be tenacious. I will be stubborn. I will be, I will hold on to the issue that I'm fighting for until the very end. I will ignore the gaslighters and the mansplainers. There are so many out there. Every day, I think we are gaslit and mansplained to more times than we care to remember. It's actually, it comes as often as our sneezing or our breathing. And finally, I will reject abuse. And that's one thing I've had to learn, even in the social media spaces as we activist and speak. I reject abuse. In the early days, when I was getting used to using Twitter, somebody abuses you, you say, oh my God, I can't block them because, maybe they have something valid to say. Anyone who is abusing you has nothing valid to say. Block them. Block them. I am so excited and happy every time I get to use my block button, not against people who have a dissenting view, dissent away, but dissent with respect. Anybody who abuses me, uses any part of my anatomy, anyone who ethnically profiles me, or takes the debate ad hominem will get blocked. So I reject abuse. I block abusers. I ignore gaslighters and mansplainers. I am tenacious. I am stubborn. I use facts all the time, and I will never contribute to my own oppression. And that is what I would say as kind of what are some of the things that one would do to continue to come out clearly and strongly as women, in leadership, in public spaces, in public life, as we create also a community and a network of support for one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerotich. I remember your story, Gerotich. There's one thing you said in the interview we did. You said that on social media, there's a person who actually wrote to you and told you, hey, we're going to come and castrate you, when you
No,
were
it
being
wasn't
vocal.
castration. No, no, no. It wasn't castration. They were coming to circumcise me. They were coming to genitally mutilate me. And I said, my goodness, we're talking about the price of electricity. Or you could be discussing something like, the protection of the Constitution, the defense of the Constitution, and somebody says, now you have taken things too personal. You are good until you reach that point, and then you went overboard. So you have all these people constantly trying to push your voice back and saying, no, I come out and I say, no, I will keep saying what I have to say, and I will use facts, and I will get rid of anybody who abuses me, male or female. I also want to reflect a little bit on cancel culture, because that is something I believe that also has infiltrated and infested the feminist movement, where you also create armies of correctness, of politically correct pockets of actors who will then say, no, you did not say this the right way. We're going to cancel you. You're not a feminist. You're not one of us. What is this? And I think when we call out, when I say I push back against those who would gaslight and push back, I'm also talking about cancel culture that sometimes I feel permeates the feminist spaces, but is generally across society, where if you say something that, people don't agree with, they come out and cancel you. Refuse to be canceled, especially when you have your facts and you have your conviction and you have your courage. And don't forget to be a little bit afraid, because anybody who's not afraid is foolish. Because if you're not afraid, you will not look over your shoulder. And if you don't look over your shoulder, you will be caught unawares.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Teach, for those comments. Fatma, one thing I want to mention to everyone who is here, Fatma is also one of those fearless ladies in Tanzania. She got this bird just because of being vocal against the appointment of the Attorney General. That was actually unconstitutional if you really go by the Constitution of Tanzania. She has suffered the brutal hand of the government of Tanzania. And she's still here. She still says, hey, I'm still going to be vocal. Fatma, what can you say to the young women who are trying to be vocal against the injustices of their governments, be it in Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya? What will be your parting shot as regards standing against these ills?
Look, to suggest, first of all, I just want to correct Leah. We're not fearless. We're courageous, but we're not fearless. I think when I look at someone like Stella, she's not fearless. She does have fear, but she's able to overcome her fear. I have the ability to overcome my fear, and that's what makes us courageous. We're not fearless people. We are courageous people because we can face our fears and we can overcome them. Very few people can do that. And they use their fears to justify their inaction. And these are people who are not courageous. So please, I just want to correct that. Don't call me fearless, because fearless I'm not. I do have fears. I have family, I have friends, I have people who care about me, I have concerns. I do have fear and I do get scared, but I face those fears and I rationalize them. And that is why I'm courageous, because I managed to rise above those fears and fight for a higher cause. And that is the difference. Now, so I'll get to your question. I just wanted to correct that because, someone like Stella, people will say she's mad. Because you see, when you're fearless, it's very easy for someone to say you're crazy. Because a sane person has fear, has a certain amount of fear. But if you show no fear and you call yourself fearless, or they ascribe the lack of fear for you, that is an essential human emotion that is lacking in you. And therefore, it's very, very easy for someone to just say you're abnormal and then to turn around and say you're mad. Because abnormality leads to madness, okay? But I can assure you, we're neither mad nor abnormal. We're just courageous. And they need to understand that. So to put us in these little buckets of theirs, they're just mad women. They just keep shouting. We're not mad. We're different from you because we have courage. And we have courage of our conviction. And we never waver on that. So, sorry, Leah, I just wanted to repeat that a little bit, because, but sorry, your question in my passion of saying all that, I forgot the question you had asked. Oh, yes,
No,
the young women,
no
the
problem.
young women.
What I
Yes,
was
the young women.
mentioning
So
is,
what is my advice to young women? Listen, don't look at us and think these women are fearless. We're not. We do have fear. We rationalize it. We understand. Some of us have lost dearly. I mean, Stella lost an unborn child. This is a great loss. I lost a career, and thank goodness, because to be honest with you, appearing in the courts in Tanzanian courts is the height of gaslighting. An example is that you can't get worse gaslighting than that, to be honest with you. I'll give you an example of and this is, I think it should go into the dictionary definition of gaslighting. The Mbowe case, lawyers, the advocates go in, they plead no case to answer. The judge says, no, 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 there is a case to answer here. And 2 weeks later, the prosecutor comes in and says, enters nolle. And when the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, decides to enter nolle in a case, it means he believes he doesn't have the evidence to prove the case. This is after a judge said you have sufficient evidence to prove your case. The courts in Tanzania constantly, the judges constantly gaslight us. So am I sad that I don't have to appear before judges who gaslight you because they have an ulterior motive, ulterior agenda? No, I'm not sad, because I like to keep it real. Am I sad that I was victimized? Yes, I am sad that I was victimized, and I believe I was victimized because, one, I'm a woman. How dare this woman stands up against a male establishment and tell this male establishment that, boys, you will play by the rules you made. Please play by these rules. And the rules are the Constitution. These boys don't want to even play in accordance to the rules, which, by the way, they make up and they change as they please, because, as we all know, most of our parliaments are just stuffed with them, and these rules are made up by them, but they don't want to play by them. They don't want to adhere by them. And when we ask them to at least adhere to the rules that they have created, they get angry with us. How dare you? How dare you? You're rude. You have been rude to me. And this rudeness was the argument that was made by the Attorney General against me. He said, she has been discourteous to me by alleging that I'm not qualified. Well, to be an Attorney General. So my allegation that he's not qualified to be an Attorney General, and my ability to raise that in submissions, was me being rude. And that's just, had I been a man, I don't think I would have faced the same backlash. The Attorney General is a weak man, another one of, little boy who was given a position he ought not to have been given, irresponsible. And the judge in particular in that case, another little boy who had been given a position he should not have had. And this little gang decided to victimize a woman who had said, play by the rules, boys. These are the rules we made up, and we expect you to play by them. So to all the young women out there who want to poke the bear, be aware that these little boys don't like it. They really are quite petulant, obstructive, and spoilt. And when you ask them to play by the rules, they can make your life quite terrible or difficult. And all of us have suffered from that. But nevertheless, we still don't keep quiet. We still tell the boys, play by the rules, boys. That's what we expect. We expect you to play by the rules. And by the way, not only do we expect you to play by the rules, some of the rules you make up, we don't like because they're unfair. And we expect these rules to be changed so we create a just society. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Fatma. I saw Maria putting up her hand. She'd like to contribute to the
Yes.
discussion. Maria, are you there?
Yes. Thank you, Leah. Can you hear me? I just added actually a speaker. I got a DM from this account of MCI USA. It's from Colombia, and
Okay.
really wanted to speak.
Okay.
Really wanted to speak shortly about Colombia. MCI, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, as I said, we are closing the space, but I was so touched by what you said, that there are women from Colombia who have suffered brutality. So I really wanted you to speak up on that. And this is what it's all about the sisterhood. So welcome.
Thank you so very much. Well, I'm from Colombia, South America too, but I'm trying to help this group of women. They are called Mafapo, which is a group of mothers of false positives. And it's very difficult to explain this in English because there is no right term to tell you about the meaning of the words exactly. But the euphemism coined by the Colombian press refers to the extrajudicial killing of innocent people by the Colombian army to pass them off as guerrilla fighters fallen in combat in the framework of the internal armed conflict in Colombia. So the crime committed against more than 6,402 civilians, most of them unemployed and some of them disabled, has remained largely unpunished. So there was an event like 2 days ago or 3 days ago in which 11 people from the army came and said to these women, "We are sorry, we accept we killed your children. Please forgive us." But they said things that were half truth. So now there are many cases that are like very concerning for me, because one of them, for example, is this woman who has been fighting for 14 years. Unfortunately, they don't speak English. So I'm trying to help them because she found out that her child is buried in a common grave with maybe 200 more bodies there. And in this moment in Colombia, there are some people that are trying to to construct a building over that land, maybe to cover the evidence. It's just a lot of things that are going on there in this case. So it's concerning for me. And I would
Yes.
like to do something about it, but I cannot, like, I do not have the tools that I wish I could have. And the only thing that I can do right now is to let the world know that somebody has given the order to do that. So if you may ask for facts, like how was the figure of 6,402 false positives arrived at? There is an institution called the GEP, which is kind of like the special jurisdiction for justice, and they they are like kind of a tribunal created after the signing of peace accords with FARC guerrillas in 2016. So it explains that this figure was arrived at by comparing three sources of information on false positives: that of the Attorney General's office, that of the National Center for Historical Memory, and that of the Colombia Europe USA Coordination, CEEU, which brings together dozens of social and human rights organizations. Based on this information, the GEP proceeded to deduplicate the databases to avoid double counting individual victims. So it seems like there are a lot of things here that we need help with. But
Sure.
when this organization came to face the murders with these mothers, these army people did not say the full truth. Some of them did, but some of them didn't. And they did not bring all the people that were involved. So now there is one person, is a sergeant now. He discovered all of this many years ago, but he was called the traitor of the army because he said there are some things going on here. He discovered the false positives, and now he left the country because he couldn't be there. They tried to kill him, and he's the one who knows all of these truths.
Okay.
So I'm just here trying to help to look for help and see how can I get connected with some other organizations.
Wonderful,
And
wonderful. Yeah,
okay.
sure.
Maria, can I advise something?
Yes, okay, okay, you can very quickly, but I also wanted to say something. So just give out your advice, and then I will
Just a
also give
second.
more. Yes,
My,
please. Go on.
the gentle lady who just narrated the story, which is a really sad story, she
It's from
probably
Colombia.
consult the BBC investigate. They will find that to be a big story, and especially the one they want to cover up the mass grave. I think they have the tools to kind of triangulate and find out who were the culprits of that crime.
Yes, I do see Poonam here. So I think you can maybe get in touch with her. But I also wanted to point out that there's some experiences that we have in East Africa, especially. I know that in Kenya there was the Truth and Reconciliation Committee that also has been working very hard to try to unearth that. And I do know also that eventually this will become quite something in this part of the world, as well as we start unearthing some of these things. But definitely, I would like to ask anyone from the media who is on the platform to assist on that. Leah, you can go on. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving the opportunity to MCI, because I felt like she really needed some assistance, and she really needed us to help her as well. Can I ask others also to follow her so she can also get in touch with you via DM if you have any advice to give her? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, MCI, for, I'll just call you MCI. Well, we are happy that you've shared the accounts of what's happening in Colombia. Really, really sad to hear what's happening there. I think, like Maria has mentioned, it's very important because we do have some journalists with us also on this platform who can probably pick up that story. And I think that is exactly what we're trying to do here at Mwanzo TV, on this particular platform of Shangazi Power, where we highlight all matters to do with human rights violations, just the protection of civil rights and freedoms. And that's why we are here. So very, very much important to mention that, so that we actually know also this is not just a platform where we get to talk about what's happening and develop solutions, but also take action towards highlighting some of the things happening in our respective countries. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has participated in this discussion today. Fatma Karume, thank you so much for making time. I know you are a very busy woman, and we are happy that you made time to be on this discussion. Also, Jiratit say thank you so much, all the way from Kenya, making time. I know you're a family lady, of course, also Fatma as well. Maria, also, we know you're very busy. And everyone else who has been part of this discussion. I know Stella Nyanzi left a little bit earlier. And of course, just everyone who has made time to be part of this discussion. This is not something we are doing only today. This is something we will be doing over and over again until we do get that representation of women in different countries. Because as we've spoken here today, women have the potential. They are not flower girls. Yes, they can be flower girls in some aspect, but not flower girls when it comes to leadership. And that is to say, women have potential and they are able to deliver and they are able to be great leaders. Again, thank you so much, guys, for just being part of this discussion. Remember to go on Mwanzo TV. You can check out Mwanzo TV on YouTube, also Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, but in specific, just to be able to see a little bit more about the stories of the different women who have been speaking on this platform, such as Fatma Karume, Jerotitse, Stella Nyanzi, and of course, we did have a documentary there on the late Wangari Maathai, a very exemplary woman from Kenya. Of course, also Bibi Titi Mohammed from Tanzania, who's very, very instrumental in securing the liberation of Tanzania. I mean, those stories are stories everyone will want to watch and just get to understand why Shangazi power is so important, why this conversation is so important, and we need to continue to have it, not just here on Mwanzo TV, but let it become a movement in your own country where you also become a Shangazi. Thank you again, guys, for, I don't know if Maria has anything to say before we go away.
No. Thank you so much, Leah, for that. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, guys, let me say goodbye. Thank you again for tuning in. We'll be back again. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to all the content we have also on our respective platforms. That's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and again, YouTube. Again, Shangazi Power documentary series on YouTube. Check it out and get to learn more about the women we had on this platform. Thank you again, and goodbye, guys.
Thank you very much to everybody. Thanks.